Hey, it's your host Steven here for It's Not the End of the World, and I have a special guest here with me today. It is my dad.
Hi.
My dad, Jim, is here to discuss with us entertainment and how it has changed throughout the decades, and he'll give us a little bit of his personal background with his likes and dislikes about all things entertainment. And the reason I have him on as a special guest is because it was convenient for the most part. He was downstairs, and I'm recording this upstairs in my room. And Brittany, the co-host, who's usually with me, is not able to be here for this episode. So, like I said, we're gonna go through kind of his personal take on things and all things entertainment, and we'll go through how it's changed, and then kind of like the social implications about our entertainment centered lifestyles here as an American citizen of the 21st century. So, uh, yeah, if you could just introduce yourself and kind of take us through the decades and kind of
Okay.
how things have changed.
Sure.
Maybe drop some names for some of your favorite artists and, you know, whatever else comes to mind when you think of entertainment.
Okay. I would be happy to do that. Growing up as a young boy back in the 70s and 80s, I was a part of what most would consider the golden age of television. So that basically what that meant was you had four channels. That was all you had on television. Um, and you basically, if there was something on television that you didn't like or whatever, you would go outside and play. And that's just what we did. We didn't have endless amounts of uh, quality television per se. You also couldn't watch television all night or anything like that. It would go off at 2 a.m. or something like that. But basically, what you would do is I just played outside all the time. Came in prime time, 7 to 10, something like that. Watched what was on, and then that was it. And there was no DVR to record. Something for a more convenient time. If you missed it, you missed it, and that was it. Your friends talk about the next the next school day. You out of luck. Didn't have anything to contribute. So that's what it was like. We had things like, for music, we had things like 8-track, cassette tapes. And then, of course, later on in the 90s, you had some CDs, things like that. Um, as far as television goes, I watched sports, basically. I was, baseball, basketball, football, things like that. Um, Entertainment, musically, mainly the 70s is where I tend to stay. 70s, 80s, which is obviously, when I was a teenager. And then things changed quite a bit, of course, when we got to the 90s and grunge came along and it basically kicked my Led Zeppelin to the curb, more or less. But yes, nowadays things are a whole lot different. Whole lot different, Stephen.
Yeah, seems like the pace of our indulgence has kind of quickened, like where,
Absolutely, yeah.
because entertainment was kind of reserved, I think, especially in the days of like 1800s and before.
Right.
Pretty much
Right.
like it was very reserved to certain demographics, like probably the rich and the people who had the opportunity and time to really spend on, I don't know, maybe theater performance. I don't know what people would watch or do back then, but like, entertainment was kind of very specialized. And but I think it's interesting because that it was reserved for people who had the time and the resources. So it's like wealth has a relationship on a societal level to like what kinds of things people are doing with their time. So in our culture, we're generally a pretty rich nation here in America. We have lots of fancy things like gadgets and televisions, and like there's a kind of a baseline standard for how much a person makes and is able to live on. And when you have all that you need, what do you do with your time? Well, you start to come up with ways to entertain yourself, and that's what we did in the post-war era. So 70s and 80s, the golden age of television, the golden age of music, if you want to call it that.
Yes, I would definitely call that.
The golden age, yes, and it's kind of taken on new forms more recently. Like, it's essentially the same in that we're still just kind of telling stories, replications, or ideas of like fictional lives portrayed in different forms. Like, we have somebody telling a story through a song about, this girl they love or this boy that they love, and then you see it in movies and in books. Not so much anymore because video has kind of taken over, I would say. But they're just, what is it that draws us to it, that we're so obsessed at, like, essentially just watching our own life in a different form? I guess maybe an idealized form of what we wish our lives to be. Like, it's the American dream. It's all on television, right?
Right.
And television, in the movies, and all that, and it has certainly become like oversaturated now in our time with digital media and our access, constant access. It's always in our hands. So could you kind of tell us how that struck you when it first started to spring up and it became more common to see people have a device in their hands that could do magic things like access the internet? And
Right.
and because I think you were in your 20s during the 1990s, 20s and 30s. So,
Correct,
So
yeah.
like, you were kind of at that age where you could still adapt to it, but it wasn't like in its full form that we see it now.
Right. Basically, when you start out with basically, say, a flip phone. I guess maybe that would be the first phone I remember people having. That was weird, odd. I'm always a little bit behind the curve as far as trends go. But yeah, it was different. It was odd to see somebody driving a car doing something like that, talking on the phone. Uh, Basically, it was weird to see someone walking and talking on the phone. Or I think as time went on, you would get to the point where conversations between two people without a phone is like dissipated. Um, I didn't really like it. It took me a long time to get into cell phones and what they did, and then gosh, you all of a sudden it's basically a computer, more or less, that you're holding in your hand.
Yeah, it does everything. It's not just talking and texting.
Yeah, I mean they
yeah.
can do anything. I mean, an Apple Watch, you can check your heart rate, your blood sugar levels, probably, and everything else now. Just unbelievable what can be done today through these applications on these mini computers that you hold in your hand.
Yeah, it's there's this anthropologist from the 60s and 70s, I think, is when he released a lot of his work, but he considers that our technology are some form of extensions of ourself.
Right.
So his name is Marshall McLuhan, and the idea is that like all the technologies we've come up with have been somehow like representative of different parts of our body. It's really interesting the way he puts it together, but it's like, if we're born, we don't have the means to get from point A to point B really fast, and then we develop something like an extension of our legs, which would be like the wheel.
Right.
So now, taking us into the future, basically now, actually, from that point in the future, into the future from that point of developing the wheel, now we have things that you said, like it's just a computer. It has everything on it. And that is representative of our central nervous system. It's just an extension of our brain and its full capacity for consciousness, and just always having that feedback of instantaneous feedback, like
Right. It's almost like an actual physical appendage
yeah,
in the sense too.
yeah, I know, like I've heard people before say, like, eventually we'll just have it, like sewn into our
Sure.
body or something like that. And I mean, it's like it's plausible in like science fiction, in a science fiction-y sense, but yeah, it's certainly become so central to our lives. And I think, like you said, it's kind of hampered us in some ways. Like, we're not as socially capable anymore, like in person talking, where we're not.
Yes.
Conversations have kind of dropped off. They drop off quicker, and people are more likely to just sit on their phone when they're in public, and
They're much happier, supposedly.
Yeah.
In doing so.
Yeah, it's more comfortable, I think. I don't know if they're happier, but I agree.
Yeah,
with
they think they're happier.
They think
maybe.
they're happier.
Yeah. It's much easier to just hide your head in your phone and what's going on with Instagram or Snapchat that I didn't know 3 seconds ago. Is now I'm up to date. Okay, until 3 seconds from now, and then you've got to get back on there. What did I miss?
Yeah, it's a constant feed. Now you call it a feed. It's funny.
Yes. Yes.
It's literally called the news feed because it's constantly happening. It's all at your fingertips whenever you want, and it's compulsive. A lot of times people pull out their phones to look through it without any conscious realization that they're doing it, like they're trying to feel comfortable in an awkward situation, so they pull it out. And it's like triggering something in us, like a feeling of comfort. But I think it's unhealthy in that respect, at least.
Yes, I would say it could definitely be. I'm no doctor, of course, but yeah, I think there are definitely pluses and minuses to it. There are,
as with any technology. Exactly.
Yes, endless amounts of information that could help you get from point A to point B. Anything you want to know, it's there at your fingertips almost instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm with you. There are some negativities to that as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have lost the ability to communicate face to face with another person.
Yeah. And it's because they've extended so far in their ability to communicate with as many people as they want. So it's like a double-edged sword where it brings people closer together in the digital sphere. Like you can talk to your person, to your relative, like halfway across the country, whenever you feel like it, pretty much. I mean, as long as they're not doing something
busy or something, right?
But like, it brings people close together, but then whatever is immediately in front of you, you're not really paying attention to. So it's like you're not constantly, but a lot of the times detached from your physical reality, and you're in the digital reality. So it's interesting. A lot of people are talking about it, and people are researching it as it's already developed, and they're witnessing the effects unfold in front of them. But like, it's just interesting how it works and how it's become so central to our life. But to relate it back to entertainment, really, like, we're spending so much time focusing on entertaining ourselves.
And money.
And that's,
and money as well, yes.
Yeah, and it's like we have the privilege to entertain ourselves, first of all. I would say most would, if they live in our country and participate in our culture of entertainment. And because they don't have to worry about other things, like just simply, finding ways to feed themselves and whatever else might be going on. But it's bringing people close together and it's separating us at the same time. We always see the fights that people get into online, and we could go on about that probably for a whole another episode if we wanted to.
Right.
It's also informing us, like we're getting more in touch now. I think people are with themselves and the world around them, because the more you learn, the more you know, and the more you know, the more you grow, right? Or whatever, however that saying goes. Like we're learning more at an exponential rate, so it's like we're becoming more aware of things in ourselves. So that's got to be healthy, I guess, if you take it one step at a time. You don't fully immerse yourself, because I think that can be unhealthy too. You have to find a balance. Like if you're constantly staring at your screen, your eyes start to hurt.
Telling you something. Yeah, your body's telling you something.
Yeah, it's like, and in other ways, it's, creates anxiety because you're always having thoughts on your mind. And it's like, you don't need to be thinking all the time about the latest thing or trying to distract yourself with different ideas or different games or whatever.
Right. And I just feel that moderation, as with, a lot of other things, it would be the key to navigating that to a more successful rate of maybe being healthier, being more well balanced.
Yeah.
Because, with your family, your friends, your close friends, let's say, if you're online doing whatever you're doing, that's not including them, there's going to be some natural separation and some anxieties, and you're going to miss out on a lot of things that, you probably wish you would have been a part of. Well, you might be there in the room, but you're not with them,
Yeah, and like taking us back to like your time growing up, like there's definitely contrast there where you look at the younger kids around you, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, back then, if we got on the telephone to a friend up the street or, across town or whatever, it was a 5-minute conversation at the most, and that was it. And then you were playing ball, or your mom was taking you over to their house or whatever, catching a ride to their house, or they were catching a ride to your house. So yeah, there was not a lot of phone time, and the entertainment industry was at that point going to the movies. If you did that once a month where I came from, that was kind of a treat. Nowadays you don't even have to. You can go to the theater every week, I guess, if you wanted to, when COVID-19's over with. But there's endless amounts of movies streaming constantly.
Yeah.
But games, the game players.
It becomes a passive activity. Like people aren't really so much engaged with that once a month movie that they go to see.
Right.
They're just they're just watching 5 movies in a row on some weekend day.
Right.
And it's like, I don't think you're fully engaged at that point. It's just like you're passing the time.
Yeah, you're almost a zombie, mindless zombie or something at that point. I think, we could go into things that, and how I think it's unhealthy to do these things.
Yeah, and we're saying this from a point of view that like we have indulged in all of these things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm basically watching every episode of The Blacklist in 1 month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guilty of these things too.
Yeah, especially during the times now where we're all sitting at home waiting for things to go back to normal, whatever normal
is. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So there's that whole social side of entertainment, and it's definitely kind of the best of both worlds when it comes to our own health as it relates to entertainment. Um, it's become a cultural phenomenon that is worth studying, I think, and figuring out what the next step is, because certainly we can't indulge ourselves even more. I don't think it's possible. We have this culture of indulgence in America as it relates to food and entertainment and other things. I mean, we don't have drugs legalized fully in America, but like that
Right.
would just be another representative for that culture of indulgence
Right.
if we were to have all of those things at once going on. But to find balance in navigating your way through all this is important, especially as we continue forward. And I think that's probably all that we have to say right now for this, but I'm sure we could go into it a lot more. But thanks for being on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. Brittany, if you are listening to this, I did not fill your shoes very well. I did what I could, but yes, I'm not as good as Brittany.
No, it was still good. I think you could definitely be a third host if we were to
Oh,
have
okay.
one. I think that
Okay.
it would be an interesting dynamic at that point.
Yeah,
Three
the
people.
older generation's viewpoint on things. Yeah, sure, sure.
No, not in that sense, but in other senses
Oh,
too.
okay.
But
Okay, sure.
yeah. So thank you for listening to It's Not the End of the World, and we'll get with you in the next few weeks with our next episode.